Hello, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on SI. Excuse me, and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. Great to be with you today. Practice just concluded. This is my practice report from training camp number 13 for you. And we got a lot to cover. There was a lot of discussion, but just so you know, we've already got the article up. But I want to give you some quick information about some stuff going on specific to the Raiders. John Spytek went out and signed another first round draft pick today. This time they added, again, another former first rounder. It's a safety. Um, and clearly there is a battle going on there for us at the safety position. And it's going to be interesting to me to watch how it all uh, pans out. But it's Terrell Edmunds. So the Raiders go out and sign Terrell Edmunds. And certainly he'll be a welcome addition. Now, tomorrow on the podcast, it's going to be my updated projection on the 53-man roster. As you know, I will do another when camp is over, but this is going through camp, and there have been some changes to it. And we're going to talk about all of that tomorrow on the podcast. I want to tell you, I saw something really interesting today. Robbie Leonard, the terrific defensive line coach for the Raiders, and a guy who's on a trajectory to be a DC sooner rather than later, um, was teaching the guys, and they were working at initial contact. So the moment the ball snapped, getting your hand on the offensive lineman or the tight end or whoever's on the line, and he really talked about that first initial impact. And in all my years of covering football, I've never heard it described this way. I heard it today, and it really stood out to me. And I thought it was a brilliant analysis. And he talked about the element of surprise. That get your hands on them so fast that you're almost surprising them with how quick you respond. They worked a lot today on that, and I thought it was a really good practice for the defensive line. Um, Defense won the scrimmage, won the practice today, and that it wasn't close. Um, there's obviously Alex Kappa's out, Jackson Powers Johnson's out. They both have rib injuries, but uh, the offensive line, first string and second string, was very sloppy with false starts. I thought all three quarterbacks had pretty good days, um, considering all the false starts from their line. Again, even Pete was unhappy with it. We're going to have the video up here shortly, and you can watch it. But even Pete was unhappy with how sloppy practice was. But I thought that was very interesting, just that element of surprise, and then again went right into practice where the offensive line was sloppy. Um, the defense clearly won it. In fact, the practice ended on a goal line stand by the bottom of the roster. Cam Miller was in at quarterback, and it was a beautiful goal line stand, and it was a lot of fun to watch because, all the guys, all the stars were standing around, and and but they were cheering and fighting, and I say that not fighting, but certainly cheering and excited, and they wanted to see these guys, some of them who aren't going to be on an NFL roster in a couple weeks, still win it. It was fun to watch. And again, it's just Pete Carroll building a culture of compete. I have said this to you many times that Max Crosby, Jacoby Myers, Colton Miller, Elandon Roberts, Brock Bowers, there are a handful of guys on this team that are so talented that you almost take for granted how good they are. And so every day when you don't mention them, I get email from people, hey, you didn't mention, did he have a bad day? I'm just going to tell you this. I will probably report, not probably, I would report if any of those guys had a bad day, but they don't. And so I'm trying to bring you nuggets other than the obvious. But I do want to talk about Elandon Roberts today. A couple things that really stood out to me with Elandon today. I mean, this guy has one good practice after another. He's just the consummate professional. In fact, I was talking to Cody Lindenberg the rookie linebacker about him and Devin White being consummate professionals, and he said that's the perfect way to describe him, or that's a great way, something like that. But Landon Roberts today was as good as always. And I was just watching him, and I literally thought to myself, I have been so unfair to him because he's been good all of camp. And even though I keep telling you that, so today he's there and he's moving guys around. He moves the safety, moves the linebacker, and moved 2 defensive linemen before the snap of the ball. He moved 4 guys. I mean, they talk about he calls the play, moves to the line of scrimmage, assesses the offense, and then has time to move 4 people. That is just split second. Most quarterbacks can't analyze that fast. Most quarterbacks can't. That was phenomenal. I'm going to be very blunt with you. I think that Chris Spielman could do that. For sure, Brian Urlacher had that ability as well. And man, it just reminded me of those 2 guys, just how quick he was able to get guys in the right position. And I thought, I feel bad because Jacoby's always good. Colton Miller, always good. Brock Bowers, always good. Max Crosby, always good. And I just felt bad about that. I'll tell you another veteran today that really impressed me. And I have liked his game since he's been in the league, but Jermaine Pratt. I watched him intently today. And he was doing some extra drills before practice. He was getting extra reps. This is a guy that I think is pretty secure, going to make the roster. I'm not too worried about him making the roster. This is a guy that just you can see the standard he holds himself to. That makes younger players better because they see, wow, this is how hard they work. So I'll give you an example. Max jumping in, taking extra reps. There's nobody in the world that thinks Max Crosby isn't on the 53-man. But rather than rest on his laurels, he wants to be great, so he's jumping in. There was a couple times today where some guys were jumping off sides, and you saw Colton Miller. Now, he's not Max. He's not going to scream at him, but walked right over, and you could tell exactly what he was doing. He was correcting things. And I just think that, this Raider team is not a Super Bowl team. But, man, they've got some really good leadership. Dylan Parham, this entire camp, whether it's Charles Grant or a lot with Caleb Rogers, is teaching. And I said to Dylan today, we'll have the video up shortly if it's not up by the time you watch this. But I said to Dylan today, it amazes me how, and full disclosure, everybody knows I got a great relationship with Dylan, but he's really emerged this year as a leader. And man, he's helping those young guys. And you see the competitiveness, but Pete Carroll's be a good teammate. Now, I want to talk about another issue, which I think you're going to find fascinating. Chip Kelly has a very complicated offense. So does Josh McDaniels. And to Josh's credit, he's one of the best offensive minds in the NFL. That's factual. Terrible head coach. Terrific offensive guy. And Chip does such a good job of teaching in reducing to the lowest common denominator. Do you remember when you were in school and you're learning fractions in 3rd grade and they tell you always reduce to the lowest common denominator? And whereas Josh, sometimes his offense, people were swimming in it. They were swimming in it, and it took guys a long time to get his offense. In fairness, Gruden was a little bit that way. And Chip comes in with maybe as complicated as any of them. I think more complicated than Grew for sure, and as equally complicated as Josh. But the way he teaches it and builds it. So, for example, he had 150 plays at Ohio State, according to people at Ohio State. But each of them had a minimum of 5 plays that could be run out of that same formation. So let me explain to those of you that aren't, you like football, but maybe you're not football savvy. So you go to the line of scrimmage and you see 3 receivers on one side, a tight end on the boundary side with another receiver, and you remember that formation. So the next time they come to the line of scrimmage, you yell out, what are they going to do? Well, when you have 5 different options, so you show it. Then the next time you come and show it, and the defense tries to adjust, and you run a completely different play. Then the third time you come to the line, different play. Then maybe you don't run it for 5 weeks, but you come to 5 weeks later, you go into a game and you set up in that formation, and they've practiced for all 3 things, and you run a fourth one. It just makes you better. And so by the end of the year, they had over 1,000 plays at Ohio State. But guys understand it because Chip is very patient teacher. And I'm going to be very blunt with you. People who knew Chip when he was at Oregon, who liked him, by the way, they liked him, but he came off as very arrogant. There is nobody that's worked with him here that thinks that. There's not one person in this building that thinks Chip Kelly is arrogant. I'm just telling you, and I think this is the best Chip Kelly that we've ever seen. And he was tremendous at Oregon. But this is a guy that is teaching the game. The guys are loving it. I remember when Gruden was here, guys it was a grind. And then when Josh got here, it was brutal. I remember one guy saying to me, man, it's just hard to stay awake when you go out and practice and you're 3 or 4 hours in a classroom. I have not heard one player even remotely complain or anything. They love it. He makes it fun. And so I just thought that was really interesting. Now, I'm telling you all that to say this, because I asked Dylan Parham about the system, and he certainly, it's not Dylan's character. He's not going to take shots at other people. He's not going to take shots at Josh McDaniels because Josh is the reason he got drafted. But it was interesting him talk about how much he loves the system and learning it. And I think you'll love that interview. But it just explains to you a different mentality here. Guys are Pete's not trying to kill them. And they're not walking off the field beat up. They're not walking off the field, there's still gas in the tank. He wants them to give everything they got. But this has been I've done this a long time. It's been a very fascinating camp. I want to take a minute and talk about several other people. Tonka Hemingway is getting better every day. And that young man, I am very impressed. Pegues as well is having a good camp. Not saying he's not. But Tonka Hemingway, he did a move on a guy today that I've never seen him do. And I've watched pretty much all of his film in college after the Raiders picked him. I've never seen him do it, and it was just the way he twisted. And today he showed a quick twitch, and I think he has a good twitch. I've never called it quick. He was quick today, and that guy, I'm telling you, I talked to you before about guys flashing, and you can see it with Tonka Hemingway. He's got a future here, a good future too, and I love his attitude. He turns right around and as soon as a play is over, he's looking for Robbie Leonard or, he's looking for somebody. And that kid has impressed me. To the best of my knowledge, I've never met his family. But that kid was raised right. He is fat, faithful, available, and teachable. And that kid's going to go along. If he keeps that attitude and keeps his effort, that kid's going to go a long way. He's got an interesting future in the National Football League because that kid is a sponge. And I know you're saying, well, he's a grown man. Don't call him a kid. I'm old. He's a kid. And he shows his age when he's joking around and being a kid. Nothing wrong with that. But that kid's a sponge. Now, conversely, I'll talk about a veteran, Devin White. I was watching him today on a drill. And it's a drill from muscle memory. And the way he attacked, it was like it was the Super Bowl, fourth down. If you get the stop, you win the Super Bowl. And it's why he's the consummate professional. And I'm telling you, that Raider linebacker room, well, we're going to talk about it a lot tomorrow when I do my 53-man, but that Raider locker room, impressive. Very, very impressive, that linebacker room. And it was a weakness. And John Spytek sent a really big statement. Chris Smith today. Again, he's stacking great practices. This is a guy that for sure one of the Georgia national titles they would not have won without him. He struggled since he's got here. It's a money year, and he's playing like it. Finally, we're seeing Chris Smith play like Chris Smith. And he's such a great kid. Such a great kid. It's good to see for him. I was very, very impressed with him today. Gino, I want to briefly touch one issue. I wasn't even going to touch it, but Pete got asked about it today. Evidently, somebody was holding up a sign. I don't know if this was the sign, but I saw a picture of Gino walking by it, and I was told it was the sign. Basically comparing him to Jamarcus Russell, which you literally have to just be a moron for that comparison. But when you're a fan at another team, you're trying to get in guys' heads. And evidently, Gino gave him a hand gesture. To me, should he have done it? No, but it's a nothing burger. I just don't care. And I'm going to say something to you, and I hope that you hear me and hear where my heart is on this. We live in a culture that people think a ticket to a game gives them a right to say anything that they want. Okay? And that's fine. I have no problem with that. And there are guys who, do all their opposition research and learn things about players. I remember one time Michigan State, I was covering Michigan State, went into Illinois. In the University of Illinois, there you go to a ball game in Champaign, a basketball game. It's a great atmosphere for a basketball game. If you ever get a chance, just go there for a game. And the Illini fan base, especially their student section, is just awesome. It's just awesome. I'm going to give them. I'm a Spartan, but I'm going to give them all the credit in the world. They're awesome and great kids. In fact, one time they were all over Tom Izzo, and Tom acknowledged that, hey, that one was pretty good, and they all gave him applause. They're just great basketball fans. But boy, they do their research. And a Michigan State player had a girlfriend that broke up with him. Well, somehow they find out about it, and they're just razzing about his girlfriend. And it was really funny. Okay, but and there's nothing wrong with that. But then there are others that take it to extremes. I've heard fans, I knew a player whose brother was in prison and mocked him for that. I've heard everything that you can imagine. And so, should professional athletes down in the field respond? No, just ignore it. But they're still human. They're still human. And there are things that I have reacted to that I shouldn't have, for sure. And I put myself fully responsible for that. And I just think sometimes you give people grace. So you know what? You want to scream and yell and take shots at players. All right, then don't get mad if they take a shot back. I just think it's a nothing burger. And I think we live in a society that likes to make something out of nothing a lot. And so I don't think it's a big deal. Um, do I think he should have? No. But who cares? You know what? You want to scream and yell at people? Great. Don't get mad if they scream and yell back. That's all. I, I, you guys know I've known Draymond Green since he was a kid in school. And I mean before college. I love Day Day. I love him. I know him. I respect him. He is the most passionate, well, not the most, because he is one of the most passionate people who just wants to win. If you're on his team and you're not giving maximum effort, he's going to scream at you. Okay, does he get at times a little bit too emotional? He does. But man, I'd rather have somebody on my team that cares than somebody that doesn't. And so if you want to yell and scream at people, go right ahead, but don't act like the victim when they respond. I think it's a nothing burger. I have no problem with what Gino did. And I've had a number of people asking me to comment. I interview people call me, hey, can we get me a radio show? Talk about Gino. And I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Then when I dug on it and found out, then Pete got asked today, so I thought I would address it. Let's talk about JPJ for a minute. Out today, it's going to be really interesting. Again, I've said this before. I have trouble thinking that when the season starts, he's not a starter. Okay? I have trouble with that. But the longer this goes on, and now he's injured, so today doesn't really count, but the longer this goes on, I think he's got something he needs to demonstrate to this coaching staff. You'll hear Pete's comments today because we're going to post the video and listen to when he's asked about it. I thought it was a fair question, and it's interesting. But again, I stand by my comment. I think Jackson Powers Johnson is an elite player in this league. Now, maybe they're just trying to send a message to him because he's young, because they think there's more they can get out of him. Clearly, that's the case. Okay, that's what good coaches do. But this is interesting to watch. But I'm just going to tell you right here, and I put my reputation on the line. I'm a believer in JPJ, and that kid is top of the line kid, great kid, and forget football player. Every dad wants him as a son, and he's just a great person. He's a hard worker, and tap your brakes. He's competing right now, but JPJ over the long run, if he were a stock, his career was a stock on the stock market, be a buyer. Good kid. I'm going to talk about tackling because it was terrible in Seattle, and it's been terrible for a while with the Raiders. But I need to address something here, macroly, meaning a little bit higher than the microscope. Tackling is bad around the NFL right now. I watched 3 or 4 games the other day, and the tackling was terrible. And here is why people say tackling is getting worse in the NFL. It is, but I need to explain why. So with the new rules, you're not practicing 2-a-days and 3-a-days anymore. It just isn't happening. You're practicing 2 or 3 days, get a day off. These are all collectively bargained. And so what's happening is you're not getting to tackle as much in practice. And then they're so concerned because it's a 17-game season, and I still can't fathom that they're going to go to 18. That's just too many. It's just too many. And so you got to have these guys for the regular season, so you shut down tackling even more. This is a byproduct of the collective bargaining, and it's a byproduct of adding games. So you don't have to like it. It's terrible. it's not getting much better, but it's a product of where the game is. Turn on any other game and you'll see you'll see 85% of the games poor tackling. And some teams decide they're going to go more physical. Okay, that's fine. Philly is that way, but Philly is extremely deep. Extremely deep. But I'm just addressing the reality of why tackling is so bad. I told you about Jermaine Pratt, but again, I had another note here I wanted to talk about. What really stands out to me about that guy, and again, I liked his game coming out when he was coming out of college. I liked his game. But what really stand out to me today was just extra effort and his attention to detail. There was a rep where uh, there was a rep where I don't think he was the biggest fan of his footwork. And he gets out and he walks over, and I see him working on his footwork. Just little things, consummate things. And again, you see it with Devin, you see it with Landon, you see it with Cam. I mean, not Cam, Jamal. It just, those are things that you're sitting here as a mere gainer. I mean, um, yeah, gainer, and you're sitting here as Lindenberg, you two young linebackers, and you're watching these guys like, wow, wow, they're playing at a high level. I also want to give a big shout out. I met 3 guys. I got to meet a ton of you today. Not all of you gave me your name. And but when you're at camp and people come up and say hi, you never disturb me. But first of all, it was Mikhail. Mikhail's a nurse here in Henderson. Thank you, Mikhail, for all you do, buddy. It was great to meet you. I also had the privilege of meeting Juan and Anthony, 2 other great guys. Again, I met others, but I didn't get everybody's name. But those 3 in particular, I want to give shout outs to. It was great to meet you. There were a couple of thousand people at camp today. It was really, really loud. It was a great camp. Okay, last thing. I've got an article coming later today you don't want to miss on 6 guys, 6 veterans that this coming week have a lot to prove. A lot to prove. You don't want to miss this article because these are 6 guys that are battling to make this roster, veterans, and they need a big week. And then one last thing I do need to address. I told you all yesterday I didn't understand why have a joint practice that isn't going to be physical. And I told you I was going to ask Pete about it, and I did. And I loved his answer. He said, just because we're not tackling doesn't mean we're not going to be physical. So the practices are going to be physical, but they're not going to be tackling. So as long as there is an element of physicality, then I can see why they do it. And it was a clarification because he made some comments Monday, and I got those clarifications from him. I thought it was a terrific answer by him, and I totally understand now why they're doing what they're doing. So thanks for following us, everybody. Make sure you go to si.com/NFL/Raiders to check out that article about 6 veterans with a lot to prove. We got a lot of video from today's practice. And then don't forget tomorrow, my new 53-man roster projection. Thanks for joining us, everybody. God bless you.